Hello, welcome back to another episode of Charla Football. I'm your host, as always, Gerardo. Here, my co-host, Tomas. We just watched Mexico and Belgium tie 1-1. Overall, bro, what was your initial reaction? I thought it was a good match for Mexico. One of the best matches I've seen under Vasco in a while.
I thought it was a good match, but I still think we could have played better.
Yeah.
I think that there were some subs that didn't need to be made. And that's just my opinion right now.
Overall, I'm happy with what we saw in this international window. We had Portugal. They weren't able to score against us. Belgium, at least we were able to score. It was a set piece. It was a Jorge Sanchez goal, but it is what it is. I mean, I guess we take it. And then, lastly, against Belgium, I think we could have definitely taken more opportunities, taken more of our chances. I really liked our midfield with Brian, with Fidalgo, with Lira, bro. Lira, I feel like, is going to be an undisputed starter at the World Cup. I think they're very dynamic. They press very intensely. And, I mean, even I was luckily able to talk to Kevin De Bruyne at the press conference, at the mix zone, and he even said that in those first 45 minutes that Mexico were very aggressive, and I don't know if he expected it or not, but based on what he saw, he thinks that Mexico have a good chance of making it out of the group, and then obviously once you get to the quarters, to get to the knockout stages, he said it's like a lottery. Anybody can win at that point. And it depends, of course, on who you get and that kind of stroke of luck. But I'm happy with not losing against Portugal and Belgium.
So going into the press conference, Javier Aguirre made a solid statement. I think it's a good statement. He said that 3 of those players in that midfielder that started, he was asked if they've secured their World Cup spots, and he said it's indisputable.
He's
referencing Brian Gutierrez, Lira, and Fidalgo. He said he doesn't know who would start on that match day, but he said it is pretty much indisputable that those 3 players will most likely make it to the World Cup.
Yeah. So it's confirmed then, pretty much. Brian's going to be at the World Cup. Lira's going to be at the World Cup. Fidalgo's going to be at the World Cup. Dude, that's insane, actually. Talarangel, I think, is undisputed as well, even though maybe he hasn't said it publicly. But based on his performances, especially in this window, we saw no Ochoa, obviously no Acevedo. I think we know who's going to be our starting goalkeeper. I think we know who's going to be our starting left back. I think the right back, still iffy. And then Quiñones, I think, might have also won his position, whether it's a left wing or as a second striker. He played very well. And, Vega, when he came off the bench, really didn't do much.
Another thing Javier Aguirre kind of touched on, of the 12 injured players, he's really only waiting on 3. And the only person he named that he might wait for, if everything went fine, was Marcel Ruiz, which is pretty surprising. Mm-hmm. But he did say that Malagón is pretty much out because he's going through with the surgery. But the player that we thought was out for sure, Marcel Ruiz, I guess he still is hanging on by a thread.
Yeah, obviously there's a lot of injured players. He did mention that he was waiting for 6, but for sure 3. Gilberto Mora just came back to training with Cholo, so I feel like he's one that can maybe sneak onto the list. He has to be there, given the talent that this kid has. He has to be there.
He mentioned Huescas. He really wants Huescas to come back.
Yeah. I feel like if Huescas comes back, he might be the starting right back. But obviously he has to get some minutes,
I feel like that as well. But he did mention that he doesn't like Huescas' defending. He feels like he's not the best defender. Mm. So really, he mentioned that he feels more comfortable playing with 3. This is what he mentioned, it makes sense, those 3 and then Eric Lira in front.
Yeah.
Because he said that his wingbacks are very good going forward.
But defensively,
they're iffy, so he'd rather play with a 3-man back. And he did mention Edson Alvarez.
Yeah, he's also might be coming back from injury soon, so I guess we'll see what's up with Edson. What I really liked from this match was the intensity. I think in comparison to what we saw against Portugal, the intensity didn't drop after 25 minutes. It went throughout the whole first 45, and then, what I didn't like, which was what happened in the second half, was just the little lapses of concentration. That even if it's, the gol de vestidor, it's 20 seconds into the match. One player with quality like Luque Bacchio, he's able to make the game change like that in an instant. And it was a golazo. You can't take anything away from a shot. You can't say that Talarangel could have done better, because I think that's going past any top goalkeeper in the world as well. It was an absolute beauty. But in those moments, even if it's the first 20 seconds of the second half, there has to be a full mental shift from the dressing room to being back on the field. And I feel like Gallardo in that moment didn't have that. And obviously, I'm not saying that he had a bad game. Like, he had a pretty good game overall, especially defensively. But it's just the little details. That's what every coach, what every player says about the World Cup, that it's just the little details that get you into that next round. Yeah. And if Mexico are going to make it far, because I don't think there's any doubt that Mexico's going to make it past their group. But if Mexico are going to make it far and make history in this World Cup, those are the things they need to pay attention to. Pressing at every second, being intense every moment, and just being mentally focused on the match.
What I really liked about this match was pretty much the midfield. I feel like the midfield was pretty set in stone that, I mean, these three players are quality, and the two subs that we have on the bench, which would be right now Obed and with Obed and players that can potentially complement him like Mora. And so that midfield, in my eyes, is pretty solid. Obviously, Mora would most likely be starting. I don't know, but I mean, we've seen him play at the 8, but he fits his most at the 10. I don't know. I don't see them going double 10 either. Yeah. So pretty much at this point, it's either Brian and Mora, but whoever's coming off the bench is solid.
Yeah. I mean, if Mora does recover in time and he gets some activity with Cholos, I can still see him maybe potentially over Brian coming off the bench. But, I mean, I think Vasco would be happy rotating between, like, either one starting, you know? Yeah. And then Fidalgo, I think you can't really move him. Lira, I've always said this. I think he is a technically gifted. I think he's a dog too in the midfield, and I do believe that he's going to start over Edson Alvarez in that midfield. And I'm not saying that Edson Alvarez, is a bad player. I just think, given the technical ability that Eric Lira has on the ball, his leadership. I mean, Edson has leadership too, but I just think what he does with Cruz Azul, he also does with La Selección Mexicana, but at an even greater. Level, I was saying nivel, but at an even greater level. A lot of players, when they go from club to then country, especially for La Selección, they tend to drop in form, or you don't see the same player. But Lira, I think, is the one that actually steps up, and I think that's why Vasco loves him. I think that's why Rafa Marquez loves him, and I think that's why he's going to be a starter at the World Cup over Edson Alvarez. And if Edson Alvarez does play, it's either going to be off of the bench or playing like a third center back, like you said.
Yeah, and I rate Lira highly. And I think Javier Aguirre rates him highly as well. That's why when Edson was mentioned, he was mentioned as a fourth, fifth center back option, which is pretty much what he kind of ended off on with Mexico. He played center back his last game.
Yeah.
So that's most likely where he sees him.
Based on this window, I would give it a 10 out of 10 because we didn't lose playing against two top oppositions. There's a lot of things to learn from the match as well, like the things that we mentioned, and then. I mean, at least we scored. Actually, okay, maybe a 9. Maybe a 9 because we only scored one goal in both games. And I feel like we had the opportunities to at least score in both. But, yeah, those are my ratings. What about you?
I'd give this an 8. And I don't think this is far from Mexico's potential from what they've shown.
Yeah.
I feel like if the best 11 was available, which, would include Mora and other players, Santi. I feel like, yes, Mora, Santi at least has not had that great scoring ability, but he's also complemented Raul very well. I feel like with those two players and complemented by Fidalgo, Brian, I feel like this window would have been fairly different. I feel like we could have even at least beat one of these teams.
Yeah.
And with win-win with tie, I would have said, 10 out of 10. We can't really ask much more for this team because they'd be reaching a level that we hadn't seen in a long time.
Yeah. And then, I guess looking at the World Cup now, there's only 3 matches left. It's a window against Australia, Ghana, and Serbia. 2 of those games we're only going to be able to, Mexico are only going to be able to play with Liga MX players. The last game against, I believe, Serbia and Toluca is going to be played with the full squad, the final 26-man roster that are going to be at the World Cup. So whatever we see in that match is the team that is most likely going to start against South Africa. And then based on how the rivals have done so far, like South Africa losing to Panama and tying to Panama in 2 matches, I think South Korea lost 4-0 to Ivory Coast. And then Czechia, obviously, they struggled to qualify into the World Cup. They barely made it through on penalties against Denmark, obviously at home as well. I'm very confident in our group, bro. I feel like Mexico absolutely has to top the group based on how they performed in this window. Based on how they've been performing in 2026. No losses in 2026. Unbeaten. Only 1 goal scored on. So I think we have to top the group. I don't think there's any excuses, bro.
Yeah, from what we saw right now, nobody, at least in my opinion, is close to Portugal or Belgium in terms of quality players and quality of play. Portugal and Belgium, they're 2 of the top 5 teams in Europe right now. And I just don't see anybody from that group, whether it's South Korea or Czechia or South Africa, even competing to their level. And I feel like if Mexico doesn't play down to their level and plays to the level that they showed these past 2 matches, I feel like they're taking the group.
Definitely. I feel like that is going to happen because, I mean, what we're used to from La Selección Mexicana is seeing them drop down to their opponent's level.
Drop down or go up.
Yeah, but because we're playing, like, on paper, teams that are, like, inferiores, like, obviously that couldn't happen where they drop to their level, but I think playing in Mexico is going to give them that extra boost to play above their level. You know, playing at the Estadio Azteca, playing in Guadalajara as well, I think we're going to see, hopefully, some history. That's all I want.
I hope so for that as well.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for following us along in this live coverage, post-match interview here in Chicago. If you guys want more live coverage, just make sure you guys follow the page. We can't be here without you guys. Make sure you guys subscribe, like, check out all the platform links down below. We'll see you guys on the next one. Peace out.